And here we are once again for another due diligence. Battling a couple of tech issues, so we'll see how this goes. But this morning, I'm with my new friend Vicki Machale, who I met you through Now, right? I think it was Now and I were chatting, and you mentioned your work, and then we had connected that way. Maybe for everybody here, and by everyone I mean like the 100 people that follow me. It's not a huge network. What's that? Uh-oh.
Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. As soon as we went live, my computer said battery running low, so I was trying to plug everything in.
Well, actually, yeah, the battery being plugged in might help. It'll give the screen more power, so it'll draw less on the network. So that actually might help.
There you go.
Cool. So let's start with please introduce yourself, and by that I mean your background, your when you got into the experiment, and maybe just a little bit of where you're at today.
Okay. Well, I have in 2017, my whole life fell apart. I was a soccer mom, ex-soccer mom with kids that were, just leaving the nest. And I was an executive. I owned my own business. And little by little, over several years, my life started falling apart. My career that I love fell apart. Then my best friend passed away. And then I found out that my husband was leading this secret life. And I just kept holding on for dear life. And now when I go back, because I'm a 4/6, I've got that three different life paths in the line 6. And I look back and I realize it started at 48, but I held on till 55. And I had to get to the point where I was absolutely smashed, lying on the ground near death before I let go. And when I finally let go, I had all of this metaphysical stuff start coming into my life. Mediumship and little by little it was happening, but I kept like, nah, this isn't really happening type stuff. And it was very scary and very dark. And I realize now that along with it came psychosis, which I'm in rave cosmology now with my teacher, understanding why all of this happened. And I just went on a very dark journey. Everything in my life just fell apart. And then I had all of this metaphysical stuff. Well, about a month after things started falling apart, I went into a metaphysical shop because I was looking for answers. I didn't know if I was possessed by demons. I had no idea what was going on. And I walked into a metaphysical shop and I said, if there's something here I need to see, show it to me. And as I was walking by a bookshelf, the Human Design book by Chitan Parkin fell off the shelf and hit me on the foot. So I picked it up and I started reading it. And and I didn't put it together at the time, but part of my experiment is, I know this sounds weird, but I was literally being stalked by different cars. And I'm like, why are these cars showing up in my life all of a sudden? And me not knowing, I'm start putting a story to them. Oh, this is this person, and this is what this person drives. And so I picked up the Human Design book. I went home, and for about a period of 2 weeks, I read it and I did people's charts. And I thought, okay, well, this is pretty cool. And then I put it away and never thought about it again. Well, over the years, let me back up. Within a week or two of that, I joined this master class, and in there was this woman called Raquel Reina, and she was a human design expert and a teacher. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, isn't that weird? Like not putting two and two together. Isn't that weird? She does human design. And I thought, okay, well, and I thought like I loved her, being in the class with her, but I thought she's a little wacky. She keeps stopping the teacher saying, I'm a projector. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I'm like, what? What? Because I'm in my whole manifester mode, like balls to the wall. Let's do it. Let's initiate everything. So that class was over. I thought it was kind of useless at the time, not realizing that over the next several years, I've got outer vision and I look at certain words and they just kind of light up for me. And I kept saying the book, the book, the book. And am I supposed to write my life story? Because I'm certainly not healed enough yet to write like a life story with a beginning, middle, and an end. And I had moved to Austin, Texas, and I had seen the book that day on television or something. I don't remember what. And I opened a box and there was the human design book. And I went, holy shit, the book. And it just started downloading to me. And then I went on Facebook a little bit later, and all of a sudden Raquel Reina was on my page about this retreat she was doing in Tulum. And I reached out to her and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but here's what's going on. And she said, let's go to Tulum. So when I went to Tulum, I started learning, like I have all individual circuitry. I'm a 4/6, the reason why my life was falling apart. And it's been about 2.5 years now that I just haven't literally stopped learning about human design. I have to be very careful because a lot in my dream chart. And so I have to be careful, especially as a line one with that deep dive, line one motivation. But I took her class on the dream rave. And during the class on the dream rave, it was funny because it's like life literally has set me up for things as I go through. About 2 years earlier, I had gone to the doctor, and the doctor took some blood tests, and I have this patch of psoriasis on my back and at my hairline that started right about the time my life fell apart. The doctor said, oh, well, here's some cream for the psoriasis, but we took your blood test. You have the start of a fatty liver, and so you're going to have to change your diet. Here's a referral to go see, a psychiatrist or a therapist. And so I took it and I went on my merry way. And then during that time, I started having all these problems with my teeth. I had never really had problems with my teeth, and I was having to have all of this dental work done. So during the Dream Rave class, about a month into it, I had sent her this information on the DNA codons. And I said, I don't know why, but these DNA codons are really popping out at me. I've read this. I really don't understand it. Can you give me some information on it? And she never got back to me on it. So I thought, okay, well, it wasn't important. Well, during the Dream Rave class, she brings in the DNA codons and we start talking about, we call it the Achilles heel. Ra called it the weak spot, like gates that you have in your dream rave that you don't have in your waking chart.
Yeah,
And I
weak
looked at
point.
mine. Yeah. And it was gate 5. And I saw the amino acid threonine, and something in my head started going, look it up, look it up, look it up, look it up. So as soon as class was over, I looked it up and it said, oh, and by the way, I was told I had no vitamin D. I had been on so much vitamin D. So I look it up and it says people with an overabundance of threonine may have a hard time processing vitamin D. They may have liver issues. It can cause skin issues such as psoriasis and eczema, and you may have problem with your teeth. And I went, oh my God. And so that night I sat there and I went through all 20 amino acids and I started writing down stuff and I started going into the class and I'm sending them all this information. I'm like, look what I found. Look at what this is doing. And all of a sudden I just knew things and I didn't know how I knew things. And Raquel's like, oh, okay, that's great. That's great. And she kind of wasn't getting it. And I was getting frustrated. And finally, another gal in the class, a projector, said, Vicki, I was looking at your notes. And she said, I looked up my vulnerable gate and everything that you wrote are things that I have struggled with. And all of a sudden, the light came on in Raquel's eyes and everybody else's eyes. And we started looking up the vulnerable gate, and everybody was like, oh my God, I've been struggling with this my whole life. So from
Mhm.
there, it just kept opening up. And so one day I would wake up because I started taking charts as volunteers saying, let me look at this. And so once I learned the Achilles heel gate, then one day something else would show up and I'd be like, well, this is different. What am I looking at? And I'd look at it for a little while, and all of a sudden I knew where to look and I knew what to look up. So it's like I was actually in a training process to say, okay, you learned the Achilles heel. Now let's learn the line vulnerabilities. Now let's learn the splits. Now let's learn about the start and stop codons. And I couldn't figure out, because I am the most unscientific person you've ever met. I can't even pronounce half of these amino acids, but it just started snowballing. And then once I got through the health, then started coming up and addictions. And so I realized I was kind of being shown these patterns, but I didn't understand how. So one night
Mhm.
before going to bed, I asked my guides, please make me understand, where am I getting this information, or at least knowing where to look. And I woke up inside of a dream, and I was sitting at a table with all of these guides, and they were like at the whiteboard teaching me. And so even though I was asleep, I was awake within the dream, and I knew that it was being downloaded to me through the dream
Mhm.
rave. And so that's where my information comes from. I don't wake up with the knowing. I see it, something triggers me, and I know to look. And so that's my story.
Okay, well, yeah, so many things there are clicking for me. Time frames, Chiron, that change in the body, and right now I'm super curious about where do I want to go with this. I think I want to start with everything you said there resonates, and I'm going through a battle right now with myself where I feel like my mind and body are not communicating, like they never were. Then they were in strange ways, and now I feel disconnected. I need more information from my body to feel healthy because I seem to not know what it needs, and I'm actually feel out of touch recently, and like really the last 3 weeks, there's been some sort of weird uh, thing going on where I feel very very disassociated, detached, unemotional. Like it's been a heavy couple of weeks, but I'm really starting to think that like whenever I pull on my tools, like play some music to get out of melancholy, move your body because you're just stiff and not getting moving energy. Um, I know these things, but I forget them. So I lack the habits, I lack the routine, but I also know at this point that I'm not even fueling my body. Like I'm pretty sure there's times where I'm just straight up hangry and I don't recognize it anymore. Whereas I would have been before, I'd be like, oh, I'm hungry. Now I'm like, I don't know. I just feel miserable, but I neither feel hungry or anything. I feel nothing but flat. So I sense that there's a lot
Yeah.
of information in there that can be informing. And at the same time, I'm also, as recent as like the last 2 weeks, been like, I wanted to put human design back in the bottle. Like just there, like it's analysis paralysis, right? So it's too much information. It's like, do I want to dig
Yeah.
deeper? And I mean, even as I say that, yeah, I do. I can't help. So, yeah, I want to know more. Yeah, and I think I'll
Yeah,
just
every
the
time I
last thing
try
I'll
to
say to that
stop,
is
it
that
pulls me right back in.
yeah, yeah, and I have to I think I need to accept that because I do enjoy it. Right? There's always it's just exciting. There's always something new there. Um, and yeah, like just coming out of my Chiron, so there's all this the things you talked about and the trajectory of your life is like just was ding 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 ding, right? Like so just a few years behind you and kind of a similar background. Like I didn't wasn't this in this space whatsoever. I wasn't spiritual whatsoever. I never felt connected. And now I feel it's like psychosis. Like one day I'm like, holy cow, synchronicity connected. The next day, no, I'm just a mere mortal. And then it's this like up and down wave. So I'd like balance in that or some harmony in that where it's just, but yeah, if anything that can help steer my body. And I understand from various, I know I'm rambling here for a second, but I've been listening. Jonah helped me with some with the four variables, and I understand you kind of start with getting your environment correct, and then and how you digest information, and you kind of move through the variables. And I feel like I'm swinging back and forth in them versus locking anything in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it is an experiment, and it's interesting because the PHS, from what I've been shown, has a lot to do with it. And let me start off by saying right now, I haven't gotten to that point yet where I can tell you, you need this or you need that. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. And I think that's been a part of what has really kind of stalled me off and on, is because I want this, like, I want to see the big picture, but I don't get to see the big picture. Like on my
Mm-hmm.
journey, it's not until I figure out how to do this that the next thing comes in. And I know when I've kind of mastered something, because all of a sudden I'll get 20 charts in a row that are completely something I've never seen before, and I have to figure it out. I do have some medical intuition that comes in, but I'm also the rack of tension, and my 39 is in design. So a lot of times I'm just talking and I'm provoking what, or telling people what they need to hear, and I don't even know what I've said. So all of this is coming in, and it is an experiment, and just sitting back and trusting the process. And but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times I'll go to stuff is showing up, and they'll go, oh, well, should I go take this or should I go take that? And I'm like, no, no, I'm not the person to ask this. What I can tell you is start getting yourself in alignment, start working within your, type, strategy, and authority, and start following your PHS. Now, one of the things about PHS is I think there's a lot of people that have the wrong PHS. Like,
Mm-hmm.
as much as a minute can throw you off. And so I believe that's also part of the experiment in the PHS, and especially within the diet. And I know Eleanor says the PHS doesn't line up for her. I know there's other people that don't necessarily follow it. I know, like, Karen Curry Parker said, oh, well, Raw just did it because he wanted to make money.
Mm-hmm.
The PHS absolutely has something to do with it. And right now, if you look at a lot of the studies and what's going on, because what I'm doing is I'm kind of blending the metaphysical with the medicine, and then also Eastern medicine. But they're finding out that like 90% of disease is from the mitochondria, the gut health, and
Mm-hmm.
that our mitochondria actually manipulate the way we think and manipulate our habits. And so if you're out of alignment and if your mitochondria is dying off, then it's, interacting with the DNA codons, the amino acids, where you have vulnerabilities, and it's creating dis-ease within our body. And
Mm-hmm.
you might have, there's 20 amino acids that combine to make thousands of different proteins and hormones, and drive different functions in our body. So, um, depending upon your vulnerabilities, whether or not you have start or stop codons, which means, you're not starting or stopping the methylation process within the required timeframes to make the right protein, you can have an overabundance or an underabundance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning a lot of things, and it's interesting because I've reached out to some medical professionals, and they look at me like I'm a nut. Like, who's this woman who was in HOA management for 40 years, and now she's coming in here and she's, giving people these reports? And there's a part of me that questions it myself, but every time I try to stop or step back, I'm pushed further and further. And there's even been, some very well-known names within human design that have kind of said, stay away from this girl, but I have to follow my path. And anytime I try to get off of it, I get pushed back on it. I have done several reports now where people have actually gone and gotten testing, and everything within the reports I'm giving them is being verified through actual genetic reports. I've told some people, I think you might have an MTHFR mutation. Check into that and come to find out they do have it. So it's very accurate in that, like, I can't look at your chart and say, oh, well, you're going to have, this problem. But I can
Mm,
look at your vulnerabilities and say, here's all of the possibilities. And typically they line up with what people are experiencing. And then when you go back and you look at kind of where they are out of alignment and what's happening in their life, and you go back and you look at their Chiron wounding, you go back and you look at the metaphysical reasons for this disease, you can kind of see the story. So,
mm.
you know, you may have an amino acid. It could be 100 different things. Now, I will tell you, I did one chart for one woman, and she only had one vulnerability in her chart. She had no start or stop on, just one vulnerability. And I looked at a simple amino acid, and I said, I've never done a chart that was so easy, but based upon this, if you're going to have anything, you're going to have a problem with potentially diabetes. And she came back and she said, oh my God, I'm being tested right now. I'm pre-diabetic. This is what's going on. And so it was like, okay. So there it
Yeah,
was.
it's so interesting. Like people are everybody's got and everyone in human design has an opinion about human design and has their
Mhm.
filter, their lens. And there are some folks that have been around a while that have once you get established, I think income complacency, potentially fears, you know, everyone thinks they're here to heal everybody else, you're here to save everyone else, and so we've got the way. I think,
Yeah.
Ra himself said, like, it's meant to mutate. The humanity, humans have mutated. The stoned ape theory and how we developed a brain, by some ape eating some mushrooms way back when, and then, you know, uh, Pluto being discovered, or the 4 Minute Mile, or like all these things where they're new milestones, right? Where magic becomes science. So I don't know. I'm sorry that you have to put up with that, because I think, so long as you're careful, and when you share, you're not saying, oh, you're going to be pre-diabetic, because that's a spell,
Never.
right? Where the spells, doctors do that. The doctor said to me, you're just going to have to take Advil for the rest of your life. And that was one of the things where my body went, nope. Like, it was just, don't look me in the eyes and tell me that's hypnosis. They're basically, right.
Yeah.
So I think, so long as you're saying, like, hey, this is the information. If the person's curious and wants to run with it, it's their experiment. And I think, so long as it's always presented in that way. And some of the folks that I observe, they'll say Ra says this, but what they're saying is, I'm saying this, and I'm using Ra as a backup because there's a track record there, right? And it's not necessarily even a great track record. It's a channeling of information that was skewed and spewed to make money here and there to pay bills. Like everyone has their shelter problems they got to solve, and you make decisions in the moment. So yeah, I like, we talked about this yesterday, the day before, but like, just keep doing what you're doing, and use language that maintains curiosity from the other person, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but back to
You know,
that, super interesting. And like, for me, from a selfish standpoint, I want to figure out what I'm doing wrong, because I'm there's some sort of block. And so, like, any clue, and I did a bit of my own sort of weak point analysis, and it was like a huge eye opener. Like, for me, it was that alone. But I didn't know about codons. I didn't know about the actual application of how I would eat or interact. At the time, it was just like, oh, this is the emotional pattern that existed. So
yeah. Well, I have found with me, when I get to a sticking point, when I'm looking for something, especially as an investigator, because that's what I do. When I'm looking for that answer, it's not coming to me. But when throw it out to the universe and I go, bring it, bring me the answer, make it as plain as on my face, or bring me the synchronicity to let me know I'm on the right track or what have you. It
Yeah.
comes to me. And I was playing with that the other day because there was something stupid on Facebook, but it was a Wheel of Fortune thing. And I'm looking at it, and it could have you could have used like very wrong words, and you knew for Wheel of Fortune these words weren't going to be there. But I couldn't figure it out what it was. And so I kept like going back and forth, and finally I'm like, okay, open brain, why, or open head, why are we like spending our time on this? And so I put it out there and I said, but I would like to know what the answer is. Well, the next day I click and somebody has this meme up, and I read it and I went, "Oh my god." Oh, and I had taken a screenshot of the Wheel of Fortune, and I went back and I looked at my picture and I went, "Oh, that's what it is." Like, now if I throw something out there but I can't let it go, I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to let it go. It doesn't come to me. But when I throw something out there, it comes to me. It comes to me with parking. Like, I get ready to go someplace and I go, I want the best parking spot there is. Now, if I worry about it the whole time I'm there because they told me parking was going to be a nightmare, this, and this, I'm not going to get it. But my friends laugh because I pull up and invariably somebody pulls out of the best, one of the best parking spots that there are. And they're like, how do you do this? And I'm just like, it's throwing it out there and it come to you. And for me, I'm one left arrow, three right arrows. And so I'm my brain is strategic, but everything else is in flow. And so I get into that. I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And I'm writing everything down. And then if I try and stay on script, it just all goes to hell. So it's just learning to let it go. So,
Well, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this because I have similar moments like that here and there, and then it's just gone, and it really is when I'm trying or I'm overthinking, and it's maddening, like to just ask for the answer and then just have it come because you got to trust that it's going to come. I
yeah, you got to
something you
trust
said
that it's
earlier,
going to come.
yeah, something you said earlier made me like I call it just in time learning instead of just in case. I have had to let go of like I'm just not that guy that's going to read a book cover to cover or read a manual. Like I'm just not that guy. And whenever I agonize over trying to learn something just in case learning it, complete waste of time. So I have to trust that the information does seem to come the night before. I had my computer career for the first 10 years was literally like a salesperson telling a client that I knew how to do something, and I'd go there the next day and I'd know the night before, and I would just somehow find the information I needed. The next day, I was just always ahead of everybody, but it was only the day before. It wasn't like I had all
Yeah.
this backlog of skills, and I had no idea that that was my process. But it makes so much sense now, and that was when I was in flow. Like I literally was just fearless, and then over the years, took on responsibilities, come the fears, you lose faith in your own ability to figure things out. And yeah, I kind of like gave my authority for decision making to everything but me. And
Yeah. Well, it's that
it's,
that you're wait, you're a 3-5. You're not I was
yeah,
thinking you were a line 1. I don't know why. But yeah, so
yeah,
you're a
yeah,
3-5.
no, not a lot of line one for me, I think either. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm a bouncer. I jump around and it's maddening because when it doesn't work and over the years the feedback and support I got was not there, so it
Yeah.
really weakened me. So, but it's recently
Well,
like I can feel capable, but it's a very alone feeling, unsupported.
well, when I look at your chart, and it's funny because I keep trying to compare myself to other readers or other teachers or people who do different things. And they say, oh, when I see somebody's chart, I see how magnificent they are. And My journey has been a little bit different. Yes, I can see they're magnificent, but what I see a lot of times is where their wounding is going to be, where their struggles are going to be. Because if you take somebody in and they're in just a very uncomfortable spot in their life, and you start saying, whoa, you've got this, and you've got this, and you have this potential, and you have this potential, a lot of times to me, what you're doing is you're negating what they're saying to you. And so, like when I look at your chart as a 3-5, I see, a kid that came up through the school of hard knocks. Sean don't do that. Well, Sean had to do that. And then you have that 5, which is that projection field. So you just had the potential to get the crap beat out of you, growing up. And that creates a lot of stuff that now we come in and we're growing and we're healing and we're trying to follow our human design. That's a lot of deconditioning, and a lot of that stuff is subconscious. And one of the things I've really seen within the area I'm at and in the studying I'm doing is I kind of look at our human design as our life contract. And when you start looking at it holistically and you bring in the dream and you bring in the waking rave and you bring in the Chiron and you start looking at all of this, to me, the dream is kind of where your biggest struggles come in and kind of throw you off that path and to kind of put you into that healing process. Like for me, one of the things with mine is I awakened into all of the synchronicity, and it was all of the synchronicity that actually put me into psychosis. But then when I went back and I learned about the dream rave, I learned about the lines I was in, and I actually, the line 2, it brings negative synchronicity into your life. I have gate 5 in my dream, and not necessarily it brings in precognition, but timelines are off, or it's not always, what you think it's going to be. So when I started looking at all of this and all of the synchronicity, thinking I'm supposed to do these things because that's what we're taught about city before we learn about synchronicity, and my life is just falling apart more and more and more. And then when I saw in the dream rave, oh my gosh, you've got possession, you've got obsession in these lines, no wonder. And my gate 5, that's all about time. And I realized how it shows up in my life is, because the 5 in the waking, it's all about patterns and being in your flow through having these set patterns. Well, for me, it programs me. It's so interesting because I had this aha. It looks like it isn't a pattern where I wake up at this time, I do this, and then I do this, and it programs me out of patterns. But by programming me out of patterns, it's actually a pattern. And so I'm having to really look at this because I've been years since, or since 2017, that is. So the dream rave to
Mhm.
me is as important as the waking chart. And when you think about it, one of the things that you learn very soon in human design is it says never sleep with anybody else, always sleep alone. But nobody really tells you why, because they tell you, well, you're being
Mm.
conditioned in your sleep. Well, am I not being conditioned while I'm awake? Like, am I supposed to put myself in a box? But when you look at the dream, and it's to me, it's the subconscious to the subconscious to the subconscious in many ways. And then if you're actually being dream rave, and then you have all these transits coming in, the ability to really get out of that and decondition is next to impossible. And if you don't know about
Mhm.
what's happening in the dream, can you even see it in your waking? So
Yeah. Yeah, lots to say there. I've been this is the Garoffice, so that's my bed behind me. So Wendy sleeps upstairs on Mega Bed, so we share the same room. But yeah, she's a generator when she sleeps. I'm a reflector. I've got the 42 as my weak point. She's got 53. That was a big eye opener for me. And I would like every night she would talk, or every morning she'd talk about how she had these dreams of um, you know, cleaning dishes in a restaurant for 8 hours, like just this endless cleaning dishes. And I would wake up in the morning going like, "Where's the fire? Like, what is like?" I would wake up just anxious, and I think it was just like it was literally seeping into me. So we've been experimenting with that. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
love not being in the same room, so we just take some nights where it's like this is a night where I'm just gonna hang out in aura. But in general, I kind of need to
Yeah.
pull back. So I think we're going to look at some of my stuff. I want to give you a bit of background or some information because as we talk about it, um, I just find it interesting because like I don't dream. As far as I'm concerned, I don't dream. I don't remember any. I don't wake up thinking I've had a dream. And if I do, it's really rare. And I'll be like, oh, I was dreaming about snowmobiles. And then 1 second later, it's gone. And I can't even recall the word snowmobiles. You know what I mean? Like, I know I had the dream. I know I could recall it for about a second. And then it's gone. And I'm not a visual dreamer as far as I know. And so I just find it interesting. Everyone seems to remember their dreams, they have these visuals. I got none of that. But I do understand that the dream
Yeah.
is like I think from what I understand, when I'm dreaming or when I'm sleeping, that's when I'm processing stuff. So something's going on there, and if it's not useful for me when I wake up in the morning, I'd like to improve upon that. I kind of also describe myself like I feel like I'm an big oil tanker. You know how they need like 5 miles to hit the brakes before pulling into shore? Like, this big fast moving
Yeah.
machine, then it's just like, ugh. And it's the same amount of energy to get up every morning. It's like, well, I just don't have, I don't jump out of bed. And I'd love to jump out of bed and be excited, but that I haven't had that feeling in decades. So
In decades. Well,
anything
and
that
I will
provides
tell
some,
you, whether you remember your dreams or not, you are dreaming and you are being conditioned by them. A lot of people don't remember their dreams, but you can set your attention at night and talk to your guides and ask them to help you start remembering your dreams. But if you're waking up, like especially for you because you're during your sleep, um, you're going to wake up and rather than be in that response initiation, the anger, just disappointed. Or if something goes really well in your day, you're surprised, like, oh, this went really well. So if you're fluctuating between surprise and disappointment, then you're not sloughing off that aura when you wake up in the morning. I mean, obviously we all have surprise and disappointment, but you see it a lot as I'm so disappointed that let me think of something. Oh, I'm so disappointed in our world. How, I'm disappointed that Trump got, convicted. I'm disappointed, that when you're reflecting what's going on in the world, then you can pretty much be sure that you're carrying out that reflector theme.
hmm, that's
So,
that's like it's disappointing. I think we talked about this the other day. Like we were talking about the gallbladder and how I kind of followed. It was you I was talking to about that, right? I feel like that
mhm,
was yeah, yeah.
it was
And I had my gallbladder removed, and I went through this whole experience that night where I traced it back to like the word resentment, and then I was like sat with that word resentment, and then holy cow, stuff just flowed out of me. And it's actually what's interesting is the timing of that. I feel like that was like 3 or 4 days ago, and since then I have been blank. Like I've heard the term non-duality or whatever. Like, and I watch these people talk on YouTube, and they talk about non-duality, and they just seem content, but just lost in space. And that's how it feels the last couple of days. Is I'm not attached to anything, and I kind of miss feeling. You know what I mean? So it's like a very hollow little window that I'm in, and so yeah, I'm just curious about all of this for sure. Um, The other thought, the question I had, and I don't know. So Eleanor talks about four worlds, and so the
Yes.
dream or sleep is one of the worlds, but your physical body is still there in that world. So like, am I truly a reflector in sleep, or am I still a manifesting generator in sleep with reflector tendencies in the mind? I guess that's really what we're referring to, is that mind conditioning. So I think I just answered my own question.
Yeah. Well, and the thing in dream rave is you don't have a head or an ajna. And so you're a reflector. And then what happens is you wake up and there are certain things within the different realms. For example, in the light realm, it's acoustic. It's you could wake up, not remember your dream. You may never remember your dream, but you have a noise in a certain frequency, and all of a sudden that dream comes back, that feeling or that emotion or what have you, because now you're processing it and you don't even know. You're kind of being trained like Pavlov's dog through the sound. It's very acoustic. And then in the demon realm, it's through food. So you could wake up and that's really nice, because a lot of times people hear demon realm and they're like, oh, demons, but what it really is to me, the demon realm is kind of the most beneficial, because if our body and our health is tied to food, if you're way out of alignment, you're going to start having nightmares. And those nightmares, people start going, oh, let's see, there was a red truck and a blue butterfly and this means this and this means that. No, if you're having a nightmare, then you need to start looking at your diet. It's kind of a warning that something's going on with you.
Hmm.
And then the earth plane, these are people where you could just wake up all of a sudden, you're going to dream about the stuff that went on every day, the fight with your boss, the fight with your wife, what's going on with your 401k, whatever that happens to be. But a lot of times you just wake up and you have the answer to it. Now, the more in alignment you are, the less influence it has on you. So if you're able to kind of witness your life and witness your dreams, the more you bring yourself into alignment during the day, that you can catch, oh, wait a second. Like, I have a recurring thing. My whole family fell apart. Um, and I'm not talking to my son, Sean. And every morning at between 4:30 and 7 o'clock, I wake up and it's like, I've got to fix this. I've got to fix this. And then I can spend my whole day going through, maybe I should write to him. Maybe I should call him. Should I do? And I have to stop and go, stop. You're in the not self cycle and you are being conditioned. You need to move on with your life. You need to get yourself back to where you're at. But it has kept me stuck for even knowing that what I do about the dream rave and what I'm being taught about it, I still can get caught up in it. It takes, I was 55 years old before any, and so
Hmm.
it's taking me a while to get a lot of that crap out of there.
Yeah, well, that clocks. So you meditate, obviously, right? Like,
Not as much as I should, but yes, I meditate.
so like, even that time frame you mentioned, I read or heard somewhere, like, we channel most at 4 a.m. Like, that's really when the body is like designed to be an antenna. So maybe if you're waking up at that time, like, don't just go and meditate. You're going to get some inner peace, but you'll obviously get more downloads then, and it's something to do with like that time. I can't be bothered to set an alarm and get up and do that. But if you're
Yeah.
already waking up, I would say try starting with a meditation. It might literally be the sweet spot. So
Yeah. I meditate and then I think, okay, nothing came to me. And then it could be an hour, it could be a day, it could be a week. The answer comes to me.
it just arrives later.
I yeah. And I want to start experimenting with laying down as opposed to sitting up, because when you're laying down and you that mammalian and you're shutting, I mean, obviously you're laying there, you're still thinking, what have you, but I want to see what a difference that makes in meditating, sitting up or laying down. So
I usually meditate lying down, and I heard someone. I really like yoga nidra as well, which is a real easy way to get your whole body to get quiet. Um,
Mhm.
and the lady in one of them said, like, if you fall asleep, that's what your body needed, and that was like the permission slip I needed. Right? I was afraid to like, oh, I'm not concentrating enough. I'm not meditating enough. I'm not doing it right, and that was the first thing, was letting go of that, being like, if I fall asleep during this thing, that's what the body needed, and I'm going to hear it anyways. I know I'm kind of just taking in an intention anyhow. So
Right.
yeah, I lie down. Sitting up's not really comfortable, to be honest, and can't really do lotus pose yet. Although I've had so much healing in my hips the last couple of years from my own Chiron journey, like that's where my metaphysical path took me, that I almost could sit up now finally, but it's taken years to get to the point where I could. So
Yeah. I remember listening to one of your podcasts. You said something about like you could never sit up or sit cross leg, and they would try and force you to do that. And wasn't that
yeah,
you?
I was yeah, I'm a 3'5" kid in the 70s in school where I was naughty because I couldn't sit cross-legged to watch a movie. It was so excruciatingly comfortable. I remember feeling at that age like I do at 50 when something hurts. You know what I mean? Like other kids were bouncing around and I was in excruciating agony and then getting punished because I couldn't sit still. Actually had a thought, it was like a week ago, and I remember there was this video game called Lemonade Stand, and it was the world's simplest. It was like before PC even. I don't remember what platform it was on, but every kid would get to play Lemonade Stand. It was like this entrepreneurial game where you learned how much sugar to buy, how much lemonade, lemons to buy, how to set up the stand, how the entrepreneurial tools were going to be given to me at like age 9, and I probably would have ran with it, but I never could play the game because I couldn't sit still during these movies. And really, it was just the teacher wanted me to shut the fuck up, right, or whoever, right? So it sucked. Like these days, I trust that doesn't happen as much, but that was my entire childhood. That was my conditioning, was you know
Well, yeah, you
being
had that
punished for
trial and
doing
error,
nothing.
and then you had that rotating beacon with that five.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's that's got to be tough. I've only got a couple of fives in my chart, but I'm learning they're tough ones.
well, the 5 is,
So
from what I understand, the 5 and the projection. It can be brutal. Everyone assumes I've
well,
got it all figured out. Seems to, and I just don't. But and so I just constantly disappoint everybody. So
yeah. Well, my 40 is in line five. My whole life falls apart. So guess who gets to take the blame? Like even though I I needed to leave relationship and I was not the one having the separate life, it's still mom, who left the family. It's still, and then I have the 55 in line too, and that is the thou dot protest too much. So if I even try to defend myself, I just make myself guilty. So I'm sitting here going, holy shit, I've got this projection field from both ends, and I have to sit here and I have to take it, and I just have to take it. And it's difficult. And then I'm a right angle cross up tension. So I want to come in and with an open throat to boot, and which has kind of been a problem throughout my life. So
that's so interesting. Just like harkening or thinking back the last couple of weeks, this one friend of mine, I'd call him a friend on a leash at the moment because he's been draining my energy, but he's just been attacking me verbally. Um, and I think it's just because I'm actually really calm and chill now. So it's almost like he can sense that my aura is more relaxed, and he's coming at me, and I just want to punch him in the face. And like that 5 project, it seems to be part of that, and it's getting worse. The more aligned I get, the more people either like me or loathe me, and I'm just trying to show up and be nice. So
yeah, well,
it's crazy when you see it amplified like that. Like it's like I didn't deserve that whatsoever. And do I go for the kill, or do I just let go, let them dump on me, and then just remember not get rid of it? Like I have to like get rid of that energy. And
Yeah.
There's all sorts of things I
Well,
do these
yeah.
days.
And that's going to happen for you with that 5, because for years you've been on this pedestal with this person, and this is what Sean does for me, and how he shows up these things. And the minute you don't show up that way, you're ruining his life, and it's your you the same. So, there's probably he's either going to come in alignment with who you are, or those bonds made and broken. That's another thing with that 3. That's that bonds made and broken. It's I've got I'm a 4-6, but I've got that 3955. I can think I have a beautiful conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden they just ghost me. They won't even tell me what I said. I don't even know. And so it's like, what do? You get afraid to say anything. But when it's subconscious, like if I'm consciously trying to do it, oh boy, I could pick your buttons. Like I know, and I know the friendship is over. But when it
Yeah.
happens and you're not even trying, and the thing is, an HOA management for 40 years. I don't know. Do you know anything about homeowners associations? I would go to these board
A little
meetings,
bit.
and with this 39, all I had to do was piss people off. And it was like, I mean, I have had people go after me like just short of pitchforks. I've made case law twice because suits against me and me having to defend. Like I would have done it completely different knowing then what I know now. But it
Yeah.
was like, what the heck? What did I do to you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's nuts. um, where to go from here? Do we want to? So, like, a big part of what you're doing now is producing reports for people where you're looking at the dream and um, PHS, and then providing the insights that you've picked up on amino acids and all that kind of stuff, right? So, is that should we well, I mean, I would love any insights or things to work with. So if I can be selfish, I'm going to bring your screen up here,
okay.
and, and I'm going to take the cap off to give us a little more. There we go. So what like I've told you that I don't remember my dreams, but I do agree with you that they're happening. Obviously, I understand that I'm processing something. It'd be nice if I felt like I learned something from it by remembering something. I don't know if that's something I can um, improve upon by approaching my sleep differently or the foods I'm eating. Right, like that's if you were to give me experiments to try. Um,
Do you want to start with your dream, or do you want to start with your health?
I think health, because wouldn't like if I'm following a better health regimen, I'm going to go into my sleep tooled up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Okay. Well, first of all, I wrote this down. I did your report with any health issues you had. Later, you came back and said that you had some gut health issues and you had your gallbladder removed. And so I kind of looked those up. And then I also remember you saying that you struggled with a weight problem for a big part of your life, which when I look at your chart, I can kind of see how all of this comes in. But
Well,
what I
tell you what,
do, and
I'll, I'll cut you off there for a second. I'll just explain for those listening, just to give that background. So I was always a husky kid, and like words are cruel too, right? So when you're being told you're husky, like I know what that means, you're fat. And so that I grew up being husky and had all sorts of traumas around that. I had reached 309 pounds in 2017, and so I went and had stomach surgery after 2 years of trying to convince my doctor that I needed to take the path. They didn't think it was valuable until they told me that now it was urgent. So that was frustrating. But so I lost about 120 pounds over a year and a half. But during that, that was basically that window that I've heard about with Chiron, which is like roughly around 44 to 46. You have this physical change. So I lose 80% of my stomach, which messed me up in lots of ways. And there was all sorts of complications with that. Um, Through that, my best friend, and he was my in my will. He was the trustee of my children. Turned out he was a narcissist, borderline psychopath or sociopath, and took everything that I had in my world and turned it into dust. So we've been like trying to recover for the last 5 years from the damage he caused, and of course he doesn't even acknowledge. Um, and that wrecked me. And so 3 years ago, I went up island and had this shamanic experience and got introduced to plant medicine, and that busted me open. I got introduced to human design that weekend. So here I am with 80% of my gut missing. I had diverticulitis at 36, which every doctor was like, the people get that in their 70s. So I was and diverticulitis is awful. I was in hospital on morphine for 7 days on one occasion. Um, and then later, yeah, had the gallbladder removed, which apparently at the time I heard was a common side effect of having the stomach surgery. But looking back and kind of what we were talking about the other day about like, resentment and I always thought of like I used to get motivated by having piss and vinegar. Like I'd be like, I'll show you. I had an I'll show you thing. Like if you pissed me off, I'd show you. Um, since the gallbladder's been gone, there's no I'll show you. It's like meh. Just and I don't like. I just feel so. Yeah, I'm kind of in this. Got no. I'm a sacral authority, and in my mind, I'm like, I don't even have most of my gut, right? So
Yeah.
there you go. That's the background. Just because it's more than just gallbladder removed. It was like a lifetime of my body, my innards hate me. So
Yeah. Well, and you tell that story, and I look, your Chiron wounding is in gate 21.1.
mhm.
And so right off the bat there, that 21 is all about control. So you go through this 3 where, you're learning through trial and error, you're being projected upon. So what do? As I'll show you, because the 21, what is that? The gate of control, the hunter or the huntress. So I'm going to go in. And so that's where the Chiron kind of wounding comes in is, it's about mistakes are natural, but they need to be corrected. But when you're a kid and you've got all this projection on you and you're getting in trouble, it's rather than going back and apologizing or correcting the mistake, it's like, I'm going to go after you. I'm going to get my pound of flesh, those type things. And I know that the 21, that is connected to the heart, but to me, the 21 is also, there's a lot of gall there. I don't believe you had the gall to do that to me. Out of 51 is what human design says is connected to the gallbladder, but that 21 to me, there's a lot of gall there. But when I look at your dream, when I first start looking at your health codons, I don't look at what the gates or the lines or anything is other than to see where your vulnerabilities are. So the first thing I do is I go in and I go, what Ra called weak spots? I call them Achilles heel. So you've got the gate 42 and the gate 62, which are leucine and tyrosine. You don't have any split gates. But then I go back and you've got the gate 8 in your dream, and you do have the 8-1, but there's a line resonance issue there. Your gate 8.6 in dream, but in your way you are, let me see, what are you? 8.6, but your 1 is in line 5. Well, line 6 and 1, there's not a resonance there. And so you're actually working against yourself. Plus, that gate 8 kind of programs you into darkness within the dream realm. So you've got a vulnerability there between your phenylalanine and your lysine. So I basically go through And I look at where the vulnerabilities lie between your dream and between your waking. And then the next thing I look at are your stop and start codon vulnerabilities. Now, one of the things that's interesting, and I don't think the medical community has picked up on this, but I think there's a lot of truth in it in human design, is the 3 stop codons are in your throat. And then your start codon 4130, and that's the start of the human design mandala, is in that gate 41. You have a stop codon in, and stop codons have no amino acid assigned to them. So I have been trained to look at the corresponding gate amino acid. So in the 3313, 33 is the stop codon, but the 13 is the electromagnetic. So that's in glutamine. And then in the 4130, unless you have a whole channel and it's in the same line, I have been shown that you have a vulnerability there, and that's methionine and glutamine. So you have a start and a stop codon. There's a chance that if you ever got tested that you might have an MTHFR mutation. I don't know if you've ever had any problems with vitamin B, if you've any issues with vitamin B, or if maybe you have a hard time processing gluten because it seems to kind of show up there. But they estimate 40 to 50% of the population have these MTHFR mutations. And basically, in a very, very kindergarten way to explain it is, and again, kindergarten, this is just what I've been taught, and there are people that have forgotten more than I know about this. But you have DNA, and at the end is your mRNA. And when the DNA gets hungry and says, I need my protein, the mRNA kind of, it hits the start codon and says, okay, it's time to start making this. If your start codon is off, you could begin or too early or too late to make that protein. And then when it goes out into the system and starts gathering all the things that it needs to properly build this protein, hopefully they're all there. If not, it's making the recipe that this DNA strand needs. And then it gets to the proper stop codon and says, okay, stop, you've made the recipe. Now take it back to the DNA. Okay. If you have a stop codon, you may start or stop too soon or too late. So what's happened is that recipe that's being made is not being made correctly. And so this can have zero impact. It could have a detrimental impact. It could even have a beneficial impact. It depends on your body and how this is being made. So you have, between the start and the stop, the potential to be starting and stopping too soon in these areas where you have vulnerabilities. And for example, channel 41, that's the methionine. That's all about the methylation of different proteins. Does this make sense?
Yeah, there's a lot of words in there that I'm struggling with, even just like how a start and stop codon works. But I'll trust that. Yeah,
Well,
no, I can. Yeah, keep
let
going.
me say this. If you think about this, where's our one manifestation center within human design? It's our throat, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
It's where all 3 stop codons are located. And it's also has to do with the thyroid. We have a huge population right now that have gut health issues, liver issues, thyroid issues. The liver, the gut, the thyroid, they all work hand in hand. So we are very out of alignment in our world, and we are having many people are having a hard time manifesting within this world. So if you think about it, this is where we're really being impacted. So I bring up about, raw talk have certain gates. And if you're not speaking from those gates, you're out of alignment. Well, I've got a completely open throat. So, um, unless I'm being recognized and invited to speak, I'm out of alignment. So,
Mm.
so just to kind of bring that up. But anyhow, so I go through and I do all of these, and I find all of your vulnerabilities, and then I go in and I start doing a search to say, okay, I know Sean has had gut health problems. I know he's had his gallbladder removed. Where is this showing up in his chart? So I start going through, and the first one I come to is lysine, and that I'm having a hard time seeing this. Hang on, let me
Do you
see if
want to
I
zoom
can.
in on it a bit, or yeah?
I'm looking on my half of the screen here. So, but
If you
yeah,
I was going to say, if you choose view at the top there, you should be able to at least expand the width within that window a bit. Choose view from the menu there.
I can't scroll on it, so I have to. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
looking
I
at my
see.
computer. I'm looking at it, so it's
Okay.
yeah. The first one I come to is leucine, and it's a branched chain amino acid, and it's a branched chain amino acids are consists of isoleucine, leucine, and valine. And I'm not going to go into this too much. I'm just going to kind of gloss over it. It can cause metabolic crisis, digestive issues, pancreatic. So then I go through and um, let's see. I don't tyrosine. You can have thyroid conditions. I don't know if you have any thyroid conditions. Uh, Phenylalanine. It can absolutely this depression, confusion, mental alertness. I think you said you have struggled with depression in the past, and it can also have to do with your thyroid and your gut health issues. So as I'm going through, I start seeing the pattern of, okay, we've got these issues and it's showing up. Would I be able to look at this and say, well, Sean, you're going to have, trouble with gut health or what have you? Maybe, because it keeps showing up in all of your vulnerabilities. So the more vulnerable you are and the more out of alignment you are, which you have said you were out of alignment with all of these things, the more you are susceptible to dis-ease. Does it mean that you will get these things? Absolutely not. So this is part of what I'm doing, is I'm going back in hindsight, kind of tracking, these are the patterns, this is what's going on, these are the charts, and this is what this misalignment was, or what these different things that happened in his life. Theranine, this is the one I have. This has to do with the liver. It has to do with depression. Have you ever had any skin issues
Yeah,
or
and a
sleep
lot right
issues?
now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, excess theranine, an imbalance in theranine, you're going to have digestive problems. You're going to have liver problems. You're going to have problems with your skin. If you're having problems with your skin and you have a vulnerability in this theranine, there's a chance that you have some issues with your liver, and maybe your vitamin D is off. So, and then the glutamine, you have two vulnerabilities here, and glutamine is all about your gastrointestinal tract, your stomach. And like you said, you have two vulnerabilities here, and you've had half your stomach removed. So all of these things line up. And as I said, I don't know exactly where this is going, but I do believe it further proves the scientific nature of human design and how accurate it is. And if I think about this, like I said, I'm not going to say I see somebody, a newborn or a child. What this shows to me is how important it is to raise this child in alignment with who they were born to be. Does that mean they'll never get sick? No, I don't know. But the more out of their environment they are, the more they're struggling, the more chance there is for dis-ease. And so I've kind of been accused of diagnosing people, which is the last thing I would ever do, but I can see the story. Now, when I come back up here and I start looking at your chart, you have this 2946, and body needs an awareness. It's a deep appreciation for physical experiences or not. And then you have this open gate 39, where the 39 is where, your mother or somebody may have had a 39. And a lot of times people that do have this 39, or if you're amplifying it, it's you're kind of feeding your emotions through food. And
Mm.
so I don't know if there was somebody in your life, but this 2939, that love of the body, it can very much be the or not. And so, and I know that you had struggled with that. But then I go over here and I look, you also have gate 57, and one of the codon ring within the gate 57 in your dream, and you have, I think, two different activations in the 57. It is also impacting that gate 46. So you're getting, you have a line disharmony in your waking chart where you have 46, the 46 have the 29. So you have a line 4 and a line 2, which are out of harmony. And then you've got this gate 57 from the dream rave coming in and kind of conditioning that. This to me was I really zoned in and said, this is where a lot of these issues are going to be. And another thing that I saw is I watched most of your podcasts because I knew we were going to do this. And like one of the things you said is like, I really don't know the gates and I don't know the channels, which those aren't necessarily my strong point either. But you said, I just kind of walk along and my podcast is coming together and all of these great things that are coming up in my life. Well, you must be bringing yourself into alignment as you go along, because this 2946 is about being successful where other people are not, but it's also being in the right place at the right time and being able to manifest through just knowing where to go. So the more this is happening for you, and like you have interviewed some pretty, well-known people on this podcast just starting off. So you can see as you're bringing yourself into alignment, you're kind of bringing this more into alignment. And so trusting the process and kind of looking what is manifesting in your life more so than what's not manifesting in your life. To me, this is just a huge channel for you where you'd be on track or easily get thrown off track.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that clocks. It's a kind of nice to hear you summarize it like that too, because I'm in a low state right now, and but you're right. Like some of the synchronicities and the people I'm meeting, it's like I don't understand why I'm the one that they're responding to. So I'm just grateful for it because I'm getting lots of cool insights. Yeah, I seem to have a nose for it, but I don't know how I have a nose for it. Right? Like it's not strategic. Well, sometimes it is actually. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I see what I did there, like after the fact. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things, like you have a defined spleen, which is nice. But with this 2946, this is perseverance, and it can be very enduring. And so to me, it kind of acts kind of like an open spleen where you will, stay in a place too long. So one of the things for you working on you is, are you enduring relationships? Are you enduring something? Are you persevering? and thriving. And that will be something to really help keep you on track of, where am I in alignment? What am I manifesting? Who's coming into my life? And what are those things that I need to get rid of that I'm just keeping because it's become such a habit. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, and when you're a kid, you have no choice. You have to endure. You have to do what your parents tell you to do.
Hmm.
So, and I know you said like you're getting better about like cutting ties and getting the heck out of Dodge when need be.
Yeah, I'm recognizing it's healthy and necessary and important. I've probably taken it to the extreme and really cut a lot of. I did actually. All I did is just disconnected from people and waited to see if they reached out. And when you do that, it's pretty shocking how few people actually reach out. So it's a very
Yeah,
alone feeling, but it was like a you know get back to basics and create energetic connections that actually align versus just what was comfortable. But you got
yeah.
to do that over time, and it's painful. It's kind of like, holy shit, we're pretty alone unless we're making an effort. So yeah, my
Yeah.
efforts are more discerning these days, let's say.
Yeah. So, and then I notice you do have calm determination. And I know Raw had that and he never, like, seldom ate with people. Do you eat alone or do you only eat when you're feeling calm or?
Yeah, that's been a big part of this year. Is I had no idea until I read and saw that about a year and a half ago, and it didn't click at first. I was like,
Mhm.
whatever. And then as I experimented with it, 100%. Like I used to think I was lactose intolerant because I would eat ice cream with people that were depressed, anxious, whatever. And what do? You eat comfort food. Well, I was eating ice cream. Well, it was like razor blades and then wanted to leave my body. But if I'm by myself, I can eat a tub of ice cream. Like it really, that was like the eye openers. I thought I was lactose intolerant. No, I'm not. I can pound back dairy by myself. Stay away
Yeah.
from me, keep your energy away from me. Then it's no big deal. I think food even
Yeah.
tastes different. I'm taste cognition, and then honestly, it tastes better when people aren't in my aura making me miserable. So
Yeah.
the biggest test was at Christmas. We have our usual family dinner, and there's 17 people there, kids and all the stuff, right? And I started eating, and I was just like, I can't do this. So I just got up and left the room and went to the other room and ate. And I was expecting backlash, for being because I was always the black sheep, anyways. No one even noticed. So I was like, great, I'm just gonna go eat my food in the next room. Came back, got to sort of sit and had already kind of digested it. So yeah, I've taken some of that really to heart. It's really been impactful.
Yeah. Because it's not just in your diet, it's how you digest life. And,
Hmm.
only waiting till you get a place of calmness before addressing things and just bringing that calm into your life. And yeah, with the taste, it's like you could taste the air, you could taste, the vibe people are putting off, and learning to trust that. And you you're a sacral being, and you're that 34. Oh gosh, you have 3410, 3420, but you've got the 57 in dream will go over again. And um I'm sure other people have different take on this, but I do believe that the different lines within the dream realm have very specific meanings. But I also see you out of your strengths within that gate. And so, just based upon this, within that 57, you have a very strong intuition. But with the open head, you may tend to, even though your sacral is your authority, but you may tend to talk yourself out of your own intuition, what intuition is telling you. And So one of the things when that can happen is take a minute. What does this taste to me by not doing this? What is, you know, and where does making this decision, does it make me anxious? Am I calm about it? Like just experimenting with all of these different things can bring you kind of more of that um, clarity when you're all up here in your head. And obviously that sacral, do you have a noise or not? And you're just a or you're
Great question. Because I've learned, not learned, I got to the point where I didn't even trust my sacral, but I think it was because I talked myself out of it. And I know with that spleen, it's a whisper sometimes, like how the what I get.
Mhm.
And then even just, when you were talking earlier about like messages you get, so you see different cars, I get messages and signs and stuff. Like some days I'm like, really, it's that simple. So my decisions actually come from these things that are in my face, and I'm in a state where I don't. It's that psychosis of I don't trust it all the time, you know. so my experimentation so far
Yeah.
is clouded. For me, it's definitely going to be like a mm-hmm or mm-mm. But the thing is, there's not a lot that lights my fire right now, too. So it's like, am I just
Well,
sitting and waiting? You know what I mean? Like I'm not I don't have much to respond to lately.
I'm gonna down here to your dream real quick because one thing I want to point out to you, and I do this a lot too. Like I have a lot of stuff show up, and for the longest time I watched it. But remember, I said your 42 really stood out to me.
Mhm.
Or no, never mind. That was the 46. Never mind what I was going to say. But you've got line 2 in your dream rave. And let's see what else. Yeah, you have line 2. So line 2, if you can actually bring in no synchronicity. So be careful when you're seeing things, is really check with your inner authority to make sure that this is really something that you should be following, because I get synchronicity all day long. It's not as
Mm.
bad as it used to be. It used to be just constant. It was like having constant CPTSD. Um,
Mm.
and so just be careful. You only have it, but then you also, and here's the thing is the gates are important the way I see this in human design. Like obviously the gates are important, but the lines that they're in are just as important, if not more.
Mm.
Because that line 4, which you have, you have line 4 in that gate 57. That can bring in obsession. Are you going to become a slave to something? Where is that line between what is obsession and what is healthy? Now you don't have, let's see, you don't have a lot of line 1s in your chart, but just paying attention is where is that line between obsession and what is healthy for you, because you can become very obsessed with things with these. Now, I'm trying to, you're a reflector in your dream aura, which we already kind of talked about this. Your gate 42 is one of your weak spots. And this is a fear of death, and
Mm.
not necessarily, you dying, but letting go of things. Having things go from your life. And remember, we talked about that gate 46, where you may have a tendency to endure or persevere through things because you don't want to let go of that friend. You don't want to let go of that job. You don't want to let go of something. So, how does this fear of death show up in your your life, because it can trigger fears related to deterioration and endings. And then you kind of go into that in your line too, and say it's time to let something go, but all of a sudden you start seeing these synchronicities because it's in line two saying, oh well, you should still be friends with them, oh you're being ridiculous. Like, this is how it works for me, is cognitively I know it's time to end something, but with that line two, it starts giving you synchronicities that are going against your intuition. So it's really learning to lean into your intuition.
Hmm. It's great. Yeah. I don't know enough to really know what I'm saying, but I do know that once this fellow had suggested that my weak point was 42, I started looking at my wife's chart and my mom's chart. And my memory at the time, and again, I haven't memorized, especially gates that aren't in my waking chart, I haven't spent a lot of time with, but it seemed to be that 42 wants to solve the problems of the receptive gate. Like it's there to put out its fires, is kind
Mm-hmm.
of how I interpreted it. And so I got 42 in my dream, or dream rave. My mother has 53 three times in her design. And honestly, it's been a lifetime of, for some reason, seeming to think that I need to fix everything. And it dated back to trauma right from being born and a whole series of patterns. Um, and then my wife has the 53 as well. And so the more I look at design and see the patterns, the more I'm like, okay, these people were put in my life to teach me this stuff, right? Like it's too obvious, some of it on the surface, that they're here in my life. And
What?
it's led to so many points of clarity that I forget until I'm like even talking about it. Like right now, I heard the phrase, "You can't save everyone; you can only love them," and that was only a month ago. And just hearing that was like such a release in itself, because I was just constantly trying to save everyone. I was always taking care of my parents' problems with their business. Like I was doing things that weren't any of my business, and I didn't even have energy for, and taught them to not even sort out their own problems. They would come to me first, and I overwhelmed myself with people. And I think it's that open heart of like never feeling worthy. So it was just like, I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that. And I
Oh,
throw my into the ground, right? So, but it's really
absolutely.
hard.
You've got
But
that open heart, and you've got um this 2946, and then you have this gate 42, which is telling you to don't let things die, keep it alive, and so that there's that fear there. And that's one of the things, is when I start looking at kind of the trajectory of people's lives, their health, all of these things, and you start seeing the story in your chart. And then when you go back, I did this with my addiction live. I went in and I did a couple of celebrities, and one of them was Whitney Houston, Bobby Brown, and their daughter, Bobby Christina. And when you pull up all of the charts and you start looking at all of the connections and the Chiron and the dream, and it's just like, oh my God. Like, it really makes you, Ross says no choice. I think it's like anything. There are times where we have our own free will to make choices, but there are definitely things within electromagnetics, and based upon where we are at that time and the frequency that we're in, is that we are definitely going to be pulling this in to our lives. So just
yeah,
my
I love that conversation about no choice too, right? Like Eleanor doesn't subscribe to that, and when she said that, that was such a relief, because I was like, I don't really buy into the no choice, but I like how you put it. Like, we have no choice in the themes and patterns based on our mechanics, but you do have a choice, I think, in how you show up, and or what you learn. I mean, if you do learn from all of this, you get gifts. You get to experience more. And to me, that's kind of what Chiron was for me, was this chance to turn everything around. It's been hugely disruptive, painful. There's times where I just want to like go back to what it was. But yeah, no, it's an opportunity. It's there's huge healing and huge. I don't know if I shared this with you, but I don't know what your sense is about Chiron, but it seems to me that if you can heal your Chiron, if you can work through it, you have the potential to slow down the shutdown process for your body. You know, you're basically
Yeah.
going, you're going to turn on the matrix decides, this soul isn't getting it. Start turning on the diseases because we need to get them out of here and bring in try again. And there's something about this Chiron that if you can heal it, it's I had the sense that I could live a long time, like longer than is expected. I don't subscribe to this 84-year average because that's just a belief and something that someone stated, and I'm planning to live to 150 or 300, but I want to do it with style, and I want to do it at least feeling like I do now, not be feeling like someone in their 80s and watching the clock.
Yeah.
So that's why
Well,
I'm interested in info, because I want to get there.
I'm cracking up because you said I want to do it in style, and I saw that you've got taste, and you had posted that picture of you in Mexico in this outfit that completely did not match, and it made me realize because like I'm outer vision. Like I had a girlfriend that if I went to her house, I literally could not go to the bathroom unless I changed things in her bathroom. Like I literally could not pee unless I changed it. And then I'd get home and she'd call me and she'd go, "Did you redecorate my bathroom again?" And I go, "Yeah." "Oh, no, I didn't redecorate it. I fixed it." And she'd say, "Redecorating my bathroom." Um, and so like with you with taste, and to me taste and outer vision are somewhat the same, because like things have to look appealing to me and things have to be tasteful to you, but there's so many definitions of taste. Like you were wearing that outfit with the different color socks and the different color shoes, and my first thought was I would not let him go out with me with that outfit. And then then you go back into that, "Oh, Vicki, that's conditional love, da 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 da," and I'm like, I don't. You're sitting here saying, it's got to be tasteful. And I'm thinking, okay. It just makes you.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So, anyhow, I'm just kind of laughing about this. So, how much time do we have? I know we've been on a long time. So,
I've got some energy to keep going for a bit if you want. I'll respond to that. I know I have taste. I don't know if it's good taste by anyone else's definition, but I have my taste, and I'm starting to
your
understand that.
taste.
Right? It's my
And,
taste, and
and that's exactly it is we have our own individual. My outer vision to me may not be appealing to other people.
mhm.
Just like your taste, what you find tasteful may
And
just
I
be.
honestly, I don't even know if I found that outfit tasteful. Because I think even my comment was like, how far can I push this with my wife, where she has to walk around with me at this place? But we were. I mean, honestly, I wear the same clothes back here now. I just there's some sort of I don't care anymore. I used to
Yeah.
care what people thought. I still respect what people have to say, but I care what I think, and that's part of letting go is being free enough to do that. Um, so yeah, but
Oh,
I don't know if it's peacocking or what, but it's.
that's been huge for me. For years, like I wouldn't even go to the 7-Eleven unless my hair and my makeup was done. And now if I feel like going, like not necessarily out to dinner or, out in public, but if I need to run to the grocery store or what have you, and I haven't put on any makeup or even comb my hair that day, I can do it. I think this journey kind of trains you out of a lot of that. Now,
Mhm.
I can tell this is so funny. I can tell when I'm beating myself up about going out into public without looking my best because I run into people I meet so that I could see that mirror of me going, "Oh my god," you know. But if I don't care and I just totally, I don't see anybody. But it's when I can't believe you're going out like this and you're looking this way. I'm invariably going to meet one or two people to show me my insecurities. So
Totally. I
yeah.
don't think it was Eleanor I was talking to yesterday, but there are times where I can tell that my mood can shift the whole room. Like I don't know if it's or like it's oracally I'm just getting mirrored back, but I'm like, wow, I'm having a bad day, and everyone around me is having a bad day. But if I'm able to flip it, it's amazing the power that you have within 10 feet of yourself. So I try to remind myself of that because they're much nicer to be around when I'm in a good mood, or when they're in a good mood. And if I have to facilitate it, so be it. It's just
Oh, that's
remembering to be.
interesting. I see that more in person than unemotional. So that's interesting
Hmm.
that happened for you. Um, the next one, I'm just going to breeze through these kind of quickly. If we sit down and go more in depth, we can. But the next one
Sure.
is you have 8, and that's that gate of darkness. And to me, it comes in and it programs you. And if you look at, what is 8? 8 is that creativity. That's that artistic. And I know you're a drummer, but the 8 can really come in and program you out of program you into, oh, I could never make money doing this, or programming you out of your art and your creativity is, well, I love to be a drummer, but I have to have that 8 to 5 job because who's going to pay me? And so it really programs. And Raw had this 8 as his Achilles heel. And when I did the deep dive on his chart, I saw where it really impacted him. And I'm actually reading something where he says he knows it's impacting him. And I don't think he understood to the depth that it really was. But it has to do with not being able to live in the light all the time. A lot of times it's very easy for you to see vanity in others, especially people who do make money with their art. It can make you look down on others from a spiritual standpoint of, why is this person making money off their art or their gifts? This should be given. Or it can program you out of thinking that you can make money this way. So,
That that's very interesting. Yeah, I've been working a lot with jealousy lately, like spending time with that word. Um, and it was a jealousy of other drummers and with more success, but they put in the time. Like I've actually come to realize I haven't put in the time either. So, but there's just sort of this feeling of unfairness that is internal that I wrestle with.
yeah.
And it's only been recently being able to let that go, which has made me enjoy drumming again. Like it gotten to the point where I just, I was a drummer, but didn't enjoy it. It was just that thing I did. And people would ask me, do you love it? And I'd be like, I don't think I do. But when I really let go, I do. So it's taken a long
Yeah.
time to get that sense of play back. Um, and lately, that's another thing I've discovered. I don't know if it shows up in here, but like a feeling of forced playfulness. Like I am really in flow if I'm playful, but if I intend to be playful, it's insincere, and it's a hard line moving between the two. Um, while also trying to be a 52-year-old man who's basically a man child again, because I needed to be. Like life was hard, and I'm done with life being hard. So
Yeah.
um,
Oh.
hmm,
No, I get all that. I'm going through that right now too. I'm extremely creative, but I have not felt creative in years. And when I try and force myself to be creative, it just, ugh. But
mhm,
one of the things is, like, I love stand-up comedians, and I love kind of off the wall stuff. My sense of humor is probably a little questionable. Like I'm never getting to the city of that 39, let me tell you. So
Mhm.
it's like forget that. If I could get somewhere in the middle, I'll be happy. But I find myself, I'm listening to stuff and I'm laughing. And then all of a sudden I trigger myself because I'm having such a good time and I'm laughing. But I realize how absolutely toxic what I'm laughing at is. And so it's being able to kind of let go of that. Where years ago I would have never thought about it, but now kind of coming into this new awareness and kind of walking this path and then laughing at some of these things, it's been a struggle. I
Mhm.
think I told you I came up with my own oracle card deck called Chiron Orbiting Uranus, and it's a satirical deck. It's based upon Karen Walker of Will and Grace, of what she would be like if she was going through a spiritual awakening. And it's
Mhm.
kind of sarcastic, but there's really messages there. And I have so much fun giving them, but the messages and reading the cards. But afterwards, I still get triggered. I'm still working through that. Is where is that line with me of, it's that shadow of, what's appropriate, what's not. You're super spiritual now, Vicki, you have to behave. And there's still that little kid in me that doesn't necessarily always want to behave. So
Mhm.
yeah. So as soon as I start listening to Richard Rudd, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to hell. So, oh. And for those of you that are super spiritual, I'm just kidding. Um, Gate 19, this is a portal gate, and I have this gate 19. And 19 is it's unusual information comes through in unusual ways. And it's you end up in different places and it seems familiar, but it's really not familiar. And so I'll give you an example is I was walking through a house. I was dreaming I was walking through a house one night and I knew the house, but as I was walking through the house, it wasn't familiar. So even though I knew what the house was, the people in it weren't familiar. But even though I recognized their face, I knew who they were. And so it brings in and in this dream, I was walking through and there were all of these animal heads on the wall. And the eyes were all watching me. And there was this one that whenever I would go past it, it would snap at me. And so I knew I had to go past it, but I would try to stay as far away from it as I could. Um, and it comes down to a lot of times what you need or what you need to survive. And when I really it took me a while to really process that dream, but what it was showing me was the house I grew up in, I wasn't safe. And there were certain I was always being watched, and there were certain people in each of the different kind of messages with them. But the one was and again, I'm not blaming my mother. My mother had gone through so much, but she was always snapping at me and always going after me. So I had to walk on eggshells. I had to walk around her. And so it was showing me that the what the house really looked like in my subconscious and how I needed to survive. So a lot of times that's what happens in these gate 19 dreams is they come in and the perspective is shifted and things don't look the same, but when you stand back and you look at it, it's actually showing you this. I don't even want to say it shows you in a distorted view what you couldn't necessarily see when you were awake or when you were growing up.
Mhm.
So that's that gate 19. The 57, this is an interesting one, and I told you you have this twice, and this is it's very psychic. It's called the Gate of Entombment. It could be very prophetic dreams. I don't know if you have prophetic dreams where you know something, you just wake up and you know something's going to happen, and then it does. It can come through as very profound knowledge, but when you're off kilter, it can be conditioning you into fear. There's actual conversations. You could have people come through, people that maybe have passed away or what have you, and they're trying to talk you out of things. And so maybe it's Uncle Pete that died 10 years ago, but he comes in and says, Sean, don't do this. Or they're trying to talk you out of what you're into, your actual intuition or your inner authority is telling you to do. It's fear of what's next or a fear of the future. So I don't know if you like stop yourself because you don't know what that future is going to bring, but it can really stop you in your tracks. And when you kind of look at this, and you're going to have to go back, or we could sit down and look at it and look at the whole theme of your dream. If you've got that gate 42 as your Achilles heel and you're afraid of death and dying or stopping things, this gate 57 can also be coming in and saying, don't do that. What'll happen if you don't have this person in your life, if you don't have this thing in your life, if you let this go? So you can kind of see a theme when you really set back of how it's influencing you within your waking life.
Yeah, I mean, fear of success and failure is a constant theme, and fear of tomorrow. But as far as like dreams, no. Like as I say, they're if it's happening, I'm not remembering it. So I'm curious to see. You're the second person in this week that's talked about like going to bed with intention of wanting to remember my dreams or something. It's not something I ever thought
Mm-hmm.
about before. So that's very interesting. Um, Part of me doesn't want to remember my dreams, and I think it probably is that fear of death, like themes of death. You know, when I think about my childhood and um, yeah, I think I was afraid to dream. So, and maybe that's what it was. I kind of like shut that down. Because yeah, I used to. Well, I'll just say this: like I used to cry myself to sleep every night when I was a kid, thinking my parents would die, and that just was a theme for like a decade. And
Oh no.
I just assumed everybody experienced that. So, and you know, that I've said it before, they're still alive. So I'm still having that, like, when, you know, my mother sends me a text and it's like, oh, I need to talk to you about your father. Every time, I'm like, oh my God, here it is. And then it's like, oh yeah, he's, met with the neighbor or something. Like, even the way my mother presents the information to me via text, it's every time it's like, oh, this is the one.
This is the
So,
one. This is the
yeah,
call. Well,
yeah.
and with those demon realm activations and the fact that like you were so off and so off, a big part of that, kind of these nightmares and stuff of dying, it was bringing in that theme, but it was also letting you know that your body was unhealthy. So,
Yeah.
again, like I'm just going through this. We're here online. I can't even see the full screen, but to sit down and kind of do a deep dive. And that's what is so important, is to say, okay, what am I looking at here? Okay, I'm an artist. I love to drum, but I'm being programmed out of thinking I could make money off of this. So then what do I do to self-sabotage myself is I don't practice, even though I know if I practice, I could be as good, if not better, but I really can't support my family doing that. And so then you just start going through and seeing the bigger picture of okay, I need to be like everybody else. I need to get this 9 to 5 job. I need to, bring myself into alignment, because if I don't, what's going to drop out of my life? What can I do? And I'm just kind of throwing that out there without having your full chart in front of me. But how is that impacting you? And so I think a lot of times we're so into our waking chart and not even paying attention to what's out here, that we don't even necessarily know what's impacting us, because
Mhm.
it's even deeper than our waking subconscious. So, and
Oh,
that's just something.
100%, right? Like we spend a third of our life sleeping, and there's something going on during that time frame. So it is the deepest conditioning potentially, I suppose, or certainly one
Yeah.
that you're absolutely vulnerable. You're lying motionless, and you're trusting your body's going to remember to breathe as you shut down for the night, almost like putting the system on standby. And yeah, I mean, obviously, it's going to have a huge impact. So.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It has a huge impact. When I did Ra's breakdown, I mean, he died at 62 of a major heart attack. And when I did his breakdown and I looked at it with his weak spot being that gate 8, and then I brought in the health vulnerabilities, it was like boom, 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 boom. He always said, oh, the open heart is the person who's vulnerable to the heart attack. He died of a heart attack. He had that 2151. I think he might have thought he was Teflon, but I don't I don't think the health issues, and Eleanor says this too, I don't think the health issues, like, I don't look at what human design says about this gate or that gate. Like, I have a basic awareness of it, but I don't see that it necessarily lines up either. It has more to do with the actual amino acids themselves than,
Hmm.
what's open and what closed. Obviously, in things, and it brings in aspects. No, it's not necessarily going to be a heart attack. And when we look at your vulnerabilities, you're in the digestive issues, you know. So
Which has been the story of my
that's
life.
just me.
Like, yeah, it's crazy. It's been all digestion for me. When I think about it. Hmm.
Well,
The
and
one thing
think
I
about it, digestive. How have you been digesting your life? Have you done a chaos? How has that showed up for you? And it's been in your system with your weight, these things. So um now you have, and taste, if you think about it, taste. So your life's off kilter, you're in trouble all the time, you're the black sheep, you're already overweight. What are you going to go to? Things that taste good, because now you're
Mhm,
using that taste, you're using that cognition as a way to kind of feed those emotions. And you had everybody else's emotions there on top of that. So
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
And
overwhelming. It's so interesting to look back at the design and see how overwhelmed I was. I just had no idea. I was just led to slaughter. So,
Connor. Well, and even looking at your chart, I would bet that you have been diagnosed as being ADHD, or there's a good chance that you have been.
well, no, but I think because I was in the 70s and that wasn't a thing.
Wasn't a
I
thing then?
No, like I've sort of self-diagnosed in the last 2 years. I've taken every
Years.
test and I'm off the charts with it.
Yeah.
Like when I
Well,
think about old me, anyways, a more aligned me, some of those things, those patterns change. But like
yeah.
the unhealthy me, ADHD is like crazy.
Mm.
Like, and
Well,
I've met people recently that like said behind the scenes they'd refer to me as ADHD boy, but never said it to my face. So I had no idea. I was just, and I see moments of it. Like even I play a lot of pickleball, and I play against people, and sometimes I'm relaxed and I startle them with just how I go from zero to hitting something, and other times I'm just bouncing all over the court like just completely lost. That's when I'm lost, when I'm just bouncing all over the place, hitting every ball and not very effective. So yeah,
Well,
it comes and goes.
it's interesting because I think there's mechanical and then there's chemical. And one of the things is when it's your design, like I look at your design, you have that open root, and that's what you're always looking for, that adrenaline. And then you have that gate, hanging gate 9, which is focus or not. You've got the open emotions where you're being hit with everybody else's emotions, not even understanding what's yours and what's not. You've got that open heart and completely open head and ajna. Like that, just mechanically, right there, can present as somebody who's ADHD. Both of my kids, my one son was born um, in the 80s, and he was diagnosed with ADHD. And we kept giving him medicine and more medicine and more medicine. And I didn't know then what I know now. Um, and so, well, we got to give him more. He's just so ADHD. He's so this. And the teachers are telling me like he's a nightmare in class and all of this stuff. And I was raised to listen to your elders. And so we just kept giving him more till he turned into a zombie. And then eventually, after a few years, he just rebelled against it. Now I look at his chart and I go, oh my God, hanging gate 9, open root, open emotions, open head, open ajna. Like it's, again, I'm not a doctor, but if you give a kid who has a chemical imbalance, like ADHD medications, and it helps them, then yeah. But if you give it to somebody where it's more mechanical and it's not working, then it's, a matter of deconditioning and
Hmm.
figuring out what those triggers are, or what those, beliefs are, trauma, what have you. So,
Yeah, it's heavy. It's a shit show, actually. And to later in life to look back and reflect, it can be maddening as well. I think I'm grateful that I didn't get diagnosed because I probably would have been medicated, and I would have been, who knows where I'd be. So for some reason I was shielded from that, suffered in my own way because of it. Well, not suffered, experienced a whole bunch of stuff that seems to be starting to serve me now. So,
mhm.
it's an ongoing experiment, but yeah, I mean, just the patterns. I forget. I learn what's good for me, and then I forget. So for some reason, there's some sort of like rebellious, not wanting to believe it's the answer, try something else, or I don't know if I'm just a constant experimenter and I can't even remember the results of my experiments. But there are times where I've got this dialed in, and other times I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot something so fundamental that I figured out a year ago. Like I seem to not want to be healed. there's a rebellious. I rebel against myself, my own. I rebel against my own good health for some reason.
Well, you have a conundrum here. I mean, you have a conundrum. You're all left arrows, but you're completely open head. And so
Hmm.
that's really about that strategy and that book knowledge. But you've got that complete, I mean, not just open or not just undefined, completely open head and ajna. So learning not to beat yourself up over that stuff, and maybe learning, I do that too. It's like, oh, I da 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 da, and it's crystal clear, and I'm like, there's no way I'm ever, I don't need to write it down. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, shit, what was that I needed to remember? So maybe learning to
Hmm.
carry around a pencil and paper, and when that inspiration comes in, writing it down. I find that once I write it down and I read it a few times, I will remember it. But try
Hmm.
not to beat yourself up about that, because you're working on, a left strategy, but you've got this completely open head and ajna. And
Hmm.
so,
Yeah, I could
be
be
kind to
very
yourself.
influenced by other people, and it is kind of recognizing what's mine is it's becoming more clear. And part of that is that sleeping by myself too. Like it really, I kind of need to just be like, okay, what's mine? I spent a lot of time recently, like, because I think I mentioned it early on today. I feel disassociated. I don't feel passion. I don't feel drive right now. I feel kind of like just bobbing around. So to me, that is letting go. But for some reason,
Yeah.
I've lost a spark, and it's frustrating. But I don't know if that's just a phase. I don't know if it's healthy for me yet, but it's different.
I'm working on that too. Like I find that in finding myself, I have still not found myself. And like, of course, I have the open G, but I I tend to think that it has to do, like, you were in your 40s when all of this started coming. I was in my 50s. When you have for so long and you don't even know. Like, I see people talk who are sixes and they're like, "Oh, I'm on the roof and I'm this and I'm that." And I'm thinking, how come they got to know this? Like, what I now, here's what I'll tell you. If 20 years ago you would have come in and said, "Well, you're a line 6 and da da da, and this is going to happen." I was not in it. It took the complete breakdown of my life and all of this esoteric stuff to start coming in for me to even believe about it. And especially because I was married to a self-projected projector with a completely defined head, ajna, throat, G center, and he had me so conditioned, and I thought it was there's no way I would have listened. Like, when
Mhm.
all of the stuff started happening with the mediumship and all of the other stuff, like, my family thought I had gone absolutely nuts, which I had in some ways, but not nuts in the way that they were thinking I was. And
Mhm.
still to this day, it's like, okay, she went crazy and it's all her fault. Because if she would have just done what we would have told her, she would have been fine, you know?
Well,
So,
what do they know? Honestly. Um, yeah, I was talking to a friend yesterday about that. Like, it is really hard to go through this experience in your hometown. Like, I definitely now recognize you see people that just like they go and move away, they just leave, and it's a full life reset, and it's so attractive to want to do that, but I can't. I love my wife, I love my kids, I love. There's too many things here that you know. So it's more about how can I strategize around that because there it would be far easier to just go somewhere else, start fresh. No one's got me pegged, and I get to actually like live out, like really try to live my design full fledged. Instead, I'm trucking through it day by day, and 3 years later, like I am definitely a very different person than I was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Um, for sure,
And
even 2 years ago.
I'm kind of the opposite, but it's interesting that you said that because I kind of hid this part of my life, or I had like a different Facebook page under a different name, like Side Chick instead of Vicki Machale. And I didn't necessarily hide it from my family, but I didn't invite them onto my page.
Yeah.
But when I got into human design, I said, you know what? No, I have to kind of step into who I am. And so I put it out there under my name so that people did see me. And it's been interesting because, like, my sister, she owns like a furniture store and she does all of this stuff. And you see my family as she says, "Oh, we're having a sale," or da 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 da. And my whole family is like sharing her stuff, like, and I'm doing on finding addictions or health in the codons, and I'm doing these lives, and there's not one comment, there's not one share, there's not one, "Oh wow, this is interesting." It's kind of like, okay, we'll put up with it, but we're certainly not going to support it type thing. Like, it's very
Mhm.
side eye, but for me, kind of working through that has been important to say, no, I'm not going to hide anymore. Even though I still think it does stop me sometimes.
Mhm.
So
Hmm. I want to ask you a question. Part of me was just going to ask you after we wrapped up here, but I'm going to do it here because I'd
Uh-oh.
be curious if anyone else is watching what they would say to this.
Yes, they're
So,
real.
what's that?
Yes, they're real.
No, no. So I think I mentioned this the other day in our little volley chat, but there's a little girl in my town here, and she's suffered a ton. Like right from age 3, I don't know how many surgeries she's had on her head, and like it's just she's got a really rare disease. And I met her through Make a Wish. I was like the volunteer to help give her a trip to Florida. And Make a Wish
Oh,
is, the intention of that is to give hope, put some steam in their tank so they can keep fighting. So, to my knowledge, she's still here, still struggling. And I remember her mom when she said, like, when they were in Florida, the child's symptoms, like, a lot of them went away. Like, for the 10 days they were there in this magical place, like, she was just a whole lot different. And I just remember that so clearly, like the pattern. And then, of course, she's back in Victoria, and it's just, and watching moms suffer and struggle and all these things.
she's in the
And,
right environment.
right? So,
Yeah.
but then I think about, I haven't been asked to fix this. I know that if I interfere, things go wrong. But part of me is like, I want to, you know, have you look at her chart and this information and be like, what clues could be there, right? That mom could use. Because I think mom is at a point of desperation, and doctors are just like, I don't know, let's try this. Oh, let's do this. Like, honestly, there's not, this girl's suffering, right?
Yeah.
So do I interfere? Do we take a look? Do we do that privately? Do we do it here one day where we don't say who the person is, but we, if people chime in, like, I see those patterns, and then, you slip mom a side note saying, hey, we're talking about your kid here. But like, is that interfering? Like, is that interfering with choice? Like, this is where my brain goes because it breaks my heart.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say I would absolutely be honored to do her chart. As a matter of fact, I have a thing on my website where I won't turn anybody away that's looking for answers. I don't know if I will give them answers. A lot of times it has been a big wake up call for a lot of people because they're having these symptoms, and just reading this makes them aware of things. So I would absolutely be willing to do that. I would go back I would go back into trusting your authority and putting it out to the universe and waiting for the synchronicity to come, and then asking your sacral, and then if it's a yes, then doing the initiation. And if that point is just picking up the phone and saying, hey, I don't know if this will help or not, but here's what I've got, and I'd love to gift it to you. And I would absolutely love to do that. But yeah, it always goes
Yeah.
back to that following your inner authority, and it'll show up or it won't.
Well, my motivation is desire. And, when you start
Hmm.
thinking about those things, like, is desire something to pay attention to then? Like, do I pay attention to that motivation, or is that, what else? Like, I don't feel like there's anything that I'm trying to get out of it. You know what I mean? Well, I know I am. I hate thinking about this child suffering. So that's my motivation, it's almost like relief for me, which feels selfish, but it's like if she benefited from it.
Yeah, absolutely. The desire, yeah, I mean, desire, but you still have to follow that inner authority, and not everything
Mhm.
you desire is necessarily going to be the right thing for you. Like, so there's a lot of things that you may desire that the universe says, this isn't in their best interest right now, or maybe it is. But putting out, I mean, it doesn't hurt you to put out that desire and non attachment to would this
Yeah,
be good for her? for
Yeah.
them.
Interesting. Yeah, desires. Just as you were saying that too. Like I have lots of desires. I have lots of big dreams, and in the last week I'm like I can't do all of them. Like that was actually the
Mhm.
crash burn. Is like I want to be this and this and this and this, and it's just not practical. And so now I'm
It's
having to
just-
go back. Where am I going to put my focus?
Well, I mean, you can do it as simply as write down all of your desires and say, these are the things I desire. I know they're not necessarily all of the things that I can do right now. Here's where I feel like closest to or what have you. Throw it out. What if, universe? What if I wanted to do this, 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 and this? What if? Which one should I follow?
Hmm.
And then wait for that synchronicity to kind of come through, because a lot of times, especially when we have like 50 things that we want, we don't necessarily even know. Sometimes you think you desire things, but you don't necessarily desire that thing. There's an
Hmm.
emotion attached to it, or a memory or something, and it's not necessarily, you know it's what your mind thinks you desire, but does your body really desire that?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, that's a funny thing. I'm actually hesitant to do that exercise though. I keep finding I don't have a desire to do the exercise to write down the desires. It's a strange phenomenon. There's something something there that I'm having trouble tapping into. But maybe that is in that dream state. I literally wake up every morning. I'm gonna say discombobulated. Disoriented. I wake up every morning
mhm.
disoriented. No idea who I am. I have to kind of like remind myself. And then it's like, well, I think yesterday I was, so we'll just pick up from there.
Yeah. And you know what? That's what everybody has to do upon waking up, is because if you wake up and you are discombobulated and you're out of satisfaction, if you're disappointed, if you're discombobulated, that's telling you that you have some leftover stuff from the dream, whether you remember that dream or not. And it's getting yourself in that mindset of looking in the mirror and saying, I'm Sean, I'm a manifesting generator, and I am here to be satisfied, and I am here to respond and then initiate. And just reminding yourself of that, and maybe having a practice where you put an intention out every day to give you something to respond to. It just came into me, and again, I don't know how true this is. Something for you to look at is, could it be that you don't want to put all those desires out there because if something doesn't come through or something isn't right, then there's the fear of that death of what it is that I want not being there for me. Like I have to give up on something. I mean, that's how sneaky the dream realm can be, in that,
Hmm.
you're having this thought that I don't want that. And again, something for you to contemplate, but that's the way it works. My creativity, I desire to have this, this, and this. Well, you know what? If I don't practice drumming, and I'm not as good as anybody else, well, then I'm never did it. So I don't have to go out there and prove myself, and there's no chance of death of me not being chosen. Like even things like that fear of being successful or stopping yourself. And again, that's how sneaky these things can be, and that's why it's so important, because we can literally, and so important to follow our inner authority, because a lot of times our head is telling us something, our body, for me it's my emotions, and I have that 3955, and it could take me an hour just to figure out, you know if I want coffee or cake. I don't know. So it's crazy.
Hmm. Well, speaking of coffee and cake, my stomach is actually telling me it's hungry, which I don't actually get that very often from my body. So I'm gonna listen to that. Um,
Okay.
so why don't we wrap up here? I'm gonna do my fancy little pretend like it's really polished production and play a little video at the end. But if you want to just don't leave, and we'll catch up here at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Vicki. That was fun today.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.